Have you ever noticed how the loudest ones are often the least secure? True strength doesn't raise its voice, it raises its awareness. The most powerful people in the room don't chase attention. They command it in silence. We live in a world addicted to noise. Everyone's shouting to be seen, speaking just to be heard, reacting faster than they can think. In this chaos, we've been tricked into believing that louder means stronger, that faster means smarter, and that talking more somehow means we're doing better. But here's the truth that the wise have always known. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strength. Stillness isn't absence. It's presence. Let's take a breath together, step back from the noise, and begin to understand what it really means to be powerful in a world that demands constant performance. This isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about mastering it, mastering your energy, your reactions, your path. Because when you stop chasing, when you stop explaining, when you stop begging to be understood by people who were never listening in the first place, that's when something incredible begins to happen. Life starts to align itself, naturally, effortlessly, powerfully. This is the truth behind the phrase, stay silent and everything will come naturally. Have you ever seen the loudest person in the room? Always talking, always pushing, always seeking eyes to validate them. But look deeper, and you'll see it's not confidence. It's fear dressed in noise. It's insecurity wearing a mask of performance. The strongest person in the room isn't the one demanding attention. It's the one who doesn't need it, because that person, the quiet one, is paying attention. They're watching, they're listening. They know that silence isn't the absence of speech. It's the presence of power. Life has a rhythm of its own. When you stop forcing outcomes, stop begging for things to happen, stop explaining yourself to people who don't care to understand, that's when life begins to work in your favor. The right people begin to notice. The right opportunities start to come. The wrong ones, they disappear. And they do so without your effort. That's the beauty of it. Silence, true silence, is not empty. It's full of clarity, it's full of awareness. It gives you the space to observe, not just what's said, but what's hidden. It allows you to hear the motives behind words, to feel the shifts in energy, to see the truth behind the mask. Most people fear silence. They talk to fill it. They talk because it makes them feel visible, relevant, strong. But in reality, it only exposes what they lack. Because true strength isn't loud. It's disciplined, it's patient, it's measured. When you observe more than you react, when you listen more than you speak, you learn. You learn about people. You learn about intentions. You learn about situations before they unfold. You begin to see what others miss. Think of a master chess player. They don't announce their strategy. They don't rush their move. They sit in silence. They read the board. They understand the opponent. And they wait, not passively, but purposefully. That's how they win. That's how life works too. People who constantly talk give away their plans. They reveal their weaknesses. They signal their doubts. But the one who stays silent, the one who thinks, who watches, who moves in silence, they always stay ahead. And when they speak, their words land like thunder, not because they're loud, but because they're rare. Because they carry weight, because silence gave those words their power. You don't have to fight for respect. You don't have to beg to be seen. Just be still. And watch how people treat you when you're no longer performing for their approval. That alone will show you everything you need to know. Silence teaches you to let people reveal themselves. You don't need to ask if someone's loyal. Just stay silent and watch how they act. You don't need to question if someone respects you. Just stop chasing them and see if they come closer or drift away. And here's the real power. You don't even have to say a word. Your absence will say it for you. Your distance, your stillness, your peace. That's what speaks the loudest. The most powerful moves in life, the ones that change everything, don't come with noise. They come in quiet decisions, quiet discipline, quiet patience. That's what builds empires. That's what creates real transformation. Silence protects your energy. It shields your vision. It lets you move without distraction, without interference, without doubt creeping in from the outside. And when your work is done, it speaks for itself. It doesn't need a prelude. It doesn't need applause. A lion doesn't roar to remind the jungle it's a lion. It simply walks with presence. That's the power you hold when you stop explaining yourself to people who were never listening. Stop announcing every step. Stop explaining every decision. Stop begging for understanding, because those who truly care, they'll understand you in the silence, and those who don't, no amount of words would have convinced them anyway. People reveal their true intentions when the performance ends. When you stop talking, stop calling, stop chasing, that's when you see who's real and who was just benefiting from your noise. You don't owe anyone a performance. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself freedom. You owe yourself the discipline to remain still, even when every part of you wants to react. And here's the twist. Silence is not about weakness. It's about control. It's about strategy. It's about refusing to waste your energy on conversations that drain you, people who doubt you, or environments that don't value you. You don't have to announce that you're evolving. You don't have to prove that you're growing. Just grow, just move. Just do the work when no one is watching. And by the time they notice, it will be too late to stop you. So when the world tempts you to respond, to explain, to perform, choose stillness instead, because when you stay silent, everything comes naturally. You attract without forcing, you move without resistance, you rise without asking for permission. You weren't made to beg, you weren't made to prove. You were made to build in silence and let the results speak for you, because in the end, the loudest power is the one that never has to raise its voice. Stay silent, stay powerful, and let everything find its way to you, naturally, and just when you think you've mastered silence, life will challenge you with noise again. That's where the real test begins. Because it's easy to stay quiet in peace, but can you remain still in the storm? Let's continue. In the last part, we uncovered the secret most people overlook, that silence isn't emptiness, it's precision. And now, we go deeper. Because silence alone isn't enough. It's in trusting the timing of your life where transformation truly begins. Most people panic when the silence stretches too long. They rush, they react, they grasp. But real power, it waits, it trusts, it flows. You see, life isn't a sprint where the fastest wins. It's a rhythm, a sacred unfolding where patience builds the strongest foundation. Desperation, that's what pushes things away. You want something so badly, success, love, recognition, that you start chasing it, clawing for it, shouting into the void, hoping something will echo back. But the more you force, the further it drifts. Why? Because your energy doesn't attract, it repels. You can't catch butterflies by waving your hands frantically, but when you sit still, when you let go, they come gently, effortlessly, landing where they feel safe. Life is no different. The moment you stop grasping, begging, proving, that's when people notice your absence. That's when opportunities begin to circle back, not because you manipulated them, but because you realigned yourself with your own value. You begin to realize the person who overextends, who gives too much without being asked, who explains their worth constantly, will always be taken for granted. Why? Because when you chase someone harder than they chase you, you reverse the value exchange. They begin to believe that they're worth more than you believe you are, but silence resets that scale. When you stop initiating every conversation, when you stop chasing validation, when you simply stand still and tend to your own growth, everything that's right for you begins to move your way, not out of guilt, not out of pressure, but out of energetic alignment. And those who don't come back, those who vanish in your stillness, they were never meant to stay. Let them go, because silence also filters what was never real to begin with. The truth is, people are naturally drawn to confidence, not arrogance, but real quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be seen, the kind that doesn't shout about its worth because it knows it deeply. Those who rise aren't the ones demanding attention. They're the ones building in silence. They trust their work, they trust the process, they don't rush it, they refine it, they wait. Think of the ones who constantly seek to be liked, the ones trying to impress. They overcompensate, overpromise, overtalk, and in doing so, they exhaust themselves, and worse, they repel the very respect they crave. But those who don't need validation, who don't shrink for applause or expand for praise, they move like gravity. People feel them. They don't have to say much. Their energy says it all. Chasing is rooted in fear. Fear of losing, fear of not being enough, fear of being forgotten. But when you let go of that fear, when you operate from a place of abundance, instead of lack, you walk differently, you breathe differently, you attract differently. You stop taking breadcrumbs because you know you deserve the whole feast. You stop explaining yourself because you finally understand yourself. You don't beg for love because real love, the kind worth having, never asks you to beg. You don't chase success because true success doesn't come from desperate energy. It comes from discipline and alignment. And yes, the irony of it all is this. When you stop trying so hard, things start working out. The calls you stopped waiting for start coming in. The people who walked away start asking about you. The opportunities you gave up on begin circling back. Why? Because your energy changed. You became magnetic, not through noise, but through centered stillness. Alignment is not luck, it's chemistry. It's you becoming the person who doesn't need anything external to feel complete. And that very energy starts drawing everything that matches your level. Look around. The most respected people in the world aren't the loudest. They aren't the ones pushing their success in your face. They're the ones who've mastered stillness. They show up with presence, not performance. That's why desperation is so dangerous. It's not just unattractive, it's disruptive. It warps your decision-making. It makes you settle too soon. It makes you accept too little. It makes you move too fast. But patience, That's power, that's clarity, that's trust. When you accept that not everything good happens fast, you make room for things to happen right. A solid relationship, a successful business, a disciplined mindset. These things don't happen overnight. They're not microwave moments. They're slow cooked. They require trust, endurance, patience. And here's where silence becomes your ally again. Because when you're silent, you can hear what your emotions would have drowned out. You can sense when something feels off. You can detect when someone's intentions aren't real. You can listen to your own intuition without the interference of noise. In that space, the one created by stillness, you reclaim your control. You no longer feel the pressure to react quickly, to make noise to prove you're alive. You move at your own pace, thoughtful, grounded, strategic. And that's the difference between living and leading, between reacting and rising. The world doesn't need more people shouting, it needs more people thinking, feeling, leading from a deeper place. Silence reveals, patience builds, stillness attracts. So instead of chasing, prepare. Instead of speaking too soon, observe. Instead of proving, build. Because the ones who win in the end, they aren't always the ones who shouted the loudest. They're the ones who moved with quiet purpose, while the rest were too busy performing. And now we arrive at the hardest lesson of all, letting go of validation, not just from others, but from the version of yourself that craves it. Because in the silence you will face something deeper, the need to be seen. What happens when even that falls away? Let's keep going. In the last section, we explored the magnetic force of stillness, how stepping back, embracing silence, and releasing desperation allow life to come to you. But what happens when the noise isn't from the outside, but from within? When the silence you're trying to maintain is drowned out by your own need to be seen, heard, and validated. Let's go deeper, because this is where the real challenge begins. Validation. It seems harmless at first. A few kind words here, a bit of recognition there, and before you know it, you're hooked, not on growth, not on truth, but on approval. External approval becomes your compass. Instead of asking, "What do I think of this?" you ask, "What will they think of me?" It starts subtly. You post something and wait for likes. You make a decision and look around for nods. You say something smart, but it doesn't feel smart until someone confirms it. And just like that, you've handed over the steering wheel of your life. You dress for validation. You speak for applause. You work not to build, but to be seen building. The approval of others becomes the air you breathe. And that's the most dangerous addiction of all, because unlike other addictions, this one is rewarded by society. People clap for those who please them. They like you more when you make yourself smaller to fit their expectations. They praise you when you abandon your truth in exchange for their comfort. But here's the question: who are you when the clapping stops? When the applause fades and no one is watching? Do you still believe in what you're doing? Do you still recognize your worth? If the answer is no, then you haven't been building confidence. You've been renting it, and the rent is always due. Real power, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from applause. It comes from solitude. It comes from making decisions without asking for permission. From trusting your gut when no one else sees your vision. When you seek validation, you're asking others to decide if you matter. And if they say no, what then? You shrink, you doubt, you delay. But when you know your worth, you move regardless. You don't need approval to take up space. You don't need permission to be powerful. Think of a mountain. It doesn't apologize for its height. It doesn't shrink when clouds pass over it. It stands, unmoved, unbothered, regardless of who admires it. That's what you become when you stop needing validation. You become steady, centered, untouchable. Sure, everyone likes recognition, and there's nothing wrong with being appreciated. But the moment you need it, the moment it becomes your fuel, you've already lost yourself, because what happens when they disapprove? What happens when they misunderstand you? What happens when they don't clap? If your confidence can be built by likes, it can be destroyed by silence. But when you validate yourself, when you operate from internal knowing, you become free. You become someone who doesn't change their truth based on the temperature of the room. You speak when it matters, not when it's convenient. You act with purpose, not for performance. You no longer measure your value by how much others notice, but by how deeply you're aligned with your mission. And that's the energy people truly respect. Not the loudest voice, but the most grounded presence. Not the flashiest appearance, but the most authentic essence. When you validate yourself, you stop chasing spotlight moments. You start creating meaningful ones. You stop needing to explain yourself and start letting your work, your energy, your presence do the talking. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you felt enough without someone telling you so? When was the last time you made a choice that was unpopular but right for you? If it's been a while, that's okay, because this is your reminder, your permission slip to take back your power. You don't have to scream to prove you're strong. You don't have to beg to show you're worthy. Your life is not a pitch. It's a path, and you don't need an audience to walk it. Those who understand your silence will always respect your voice when you finally speak. And those who only listened when you were loud, they were never listening at all. Let your silence speak. Let your boundaries teach. Let your distance explain what words could never articulate. Because when you stop needing to be seen, that's when you become unmissable. When you stop seeking applause, that's when your energy becomes magnetic. And when you stop looking for someone to tell you that you matter, you begin to move like someone who's already enough. Because you are. But even as you stop chasing validation, a deeper truth begins to surface. That the more available you make yourself, the more others start to forget your worth. And that's where the next power lies. In your absence. When you stop showing up. Who shows up for you? Let's continue. In the last section, we uncovered the truth behind validation, how chasing applause erodes your power, and how self-recognition unlocks unstoppable confidence. But there's one more layer of silence that teaches louder than any words ever could: your absence. Let's talk about it. Absence is powerful. It's not about ignoring others. It's about revealing what's real. When you stop being available to everyone, you learn who truly valued you, and who only valued what they could take from you. You see, when you're always present, always calling, always helping, always giving, people forget the cost of your presence. They start to believe it's guaranteed. They mistake your patience for passivity, your kindness for weakness. But when you pull back, when you stop explaining, stop checking in, stop overextending, it creates a silence that speaks volumes. Suddenly, the phone doesn't ring as much. The people you supported don't check in. And it stings at first, but then it frees you, because that's when you see the truth. Absence teaches in a way that presence never could. It forces people to face what they took for granted. It makes them feel the space you once filled, the loyalty, the energy, the peace, the support, all now missing. If someone doesn't feel your absence, they were never truly connected to your presence. That truth hurts. But it's necessary. We often think being available makes us more lovable, more respected, more important. But real importance isn't defined by how often you show up. It's defined by what happens when you don't. Do they notice? Do they reach out? Do they respect your space or guilt you into shrinking again? People will always reveal their intentions when the performance ends. When the effort isn't constant, when the noise fades, some will step up, others will step back, and that's exactly what you need to see. Some people only stayed because of what you did for them, not who you were to them. Your value was transactional, not relational. Your kindness was a convenience, not something they respected. But when you remove that access, when your time becomes sacred, they either elevate to meet you, or they eliminate themselves from your life, and both outcomes are a win. Because here's what absence does best. It filters. It filters the loyal from the leeches, the real from the reliant, the curious from the committed. You don't have to confront anyone. You don't have to explain your distance. Just create space and let the silence show you everything. If someone only remembers your worth after you're gone, then they never truly saw it while you were there. And that's not love. That's comfort. That's familiarity. That's control. Your value doesn't decrease because they didn't appreciate it. It increases because you were brave enough to walk away and protect it. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong people. And absence helps you realize that without an argument, without a breakdown, without a dramatic exit, it's quiet, clean, unmistakable. The same people who ignored your boundaries now complain about your silence. The ones who dismissed your efforts now feel your absence like a cold wind. They didn't believe the warmth could disappear until it did. And this is where your power grows in silence again. Because when you're gone, people don't just see the hole. They feel it, not just in their routine, but in their energy. Some will reach for you, not because they miss you, but because they miss what you did for them. That's not a return. That's a repeat. You've grown too much to go back to the version of yourself that had to overgive just to be kept around. If someone doesn't fight for you when you're gone, they were never truly with you when you were present. Don't chase closure. Don't beg for clarity. Absence gives you both. The people who matter will understand your silence, even if they don't like it. And the ones who only wanted your energy on their terms, they'll fall silent too, not because you cut them off, but because they were never truly there. Let absence become your mirror. Let it reflect back the true roles people play in your life. Let it show you who's seasonal and who's solid. And if it reveals that someone never cared, then thank the silence, not because it hurts, but because it finally told the truth. But what if the absence you give others, you now give yourself? What if, instead of waiting to be chosen, you start choosing you? What happens when you trust the timing of your life, just like the seasons trust the sun? Let's move forward. Previously, we explored the power of absence, how stepping back doesn't just protect your peace, it exposes the truth. But what if that silence wasn't just about others? What if the real magic happens when you surrender to the timing of your own life? Let's continue, because now we enter the realm of trust. We are taught to push, to force things into happening, to hustle harder, speak louder, move faster. But nature, in all its power, never rushes. The tree doesn't grow overnight. The river doesn't sprint to the sea. The mountains didn't rise in a day, and yet all of them get where they're meant to go. So why don't we trust that same timing for ourselves? This world has convinced us that if it's not happening now, it's not happening at all. But that's a lie, a dangerous one. Because greatness takes time, and most people quit not because they failed, but because they rushed. They wanted fruit before the roots, results before the routine, praise before the patience. But the most important growth? It happens underground, in silence before anyone sees anything. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up every morning to check its progress. You water it, you protect it, you trust it. Because even when you can't see the growth, something powerful is happening beneath the surface. So why can't we treat ourselves the same way? Why do we panic when success takes longer than we thought? Why do we compare our path to people who are running a different race entirely? Your timing is not their timing. Your path is not their path. And your peace is found the moment you stop trying to copy someone else's pace. Patience isn't passive, it's powerful. It's a daily decision to keep showing up even when you see no proof that anything is changing. It's waking up and giving your best, not because someone is watching, but because you're building something sacred within. There's no blueprint for destiny, no perfect timeline for when things should happen. What's meant for you won't require panic. It will require preparation, because if it comes too early, you'll break under the pressure. But if you wait, if you grow, if you stay grounded, you'll be strong enough to carry it. The strongest structures in the world. They took years. Their foundations were laid brick by brick, slowly, intentionally, patiently. Why do you expect your mind, your purpose, your relationships, or your legacy to be any different? In silence, you build resilience. In waiting, you gain wisdom. In stillness, you gather strength, because every season serves you, even the slow ones, even the quiet ones, even the painful ones. Winter looks like nothing is growing. But underneath the frozen ground, the roots are expanding, the soil is maturing, and life is preparing to rise again. The same is true for your life. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. Some blessings are growing in places your eyes can't yet reach. And when you rush, you rob yourself of those roots. You create outcomes that crumble. You step into things before you're ready and call it failure, when all it was too soon. Trusting the timing of your life doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing your part and surrendering the rest. You can plant, you can water, but you can't force the sun to rise. Let life rise for you in its own time. Let success come without sabotage. Let love arrive when you're whole enough to receive it. Not everything delayed is denied. Not every no means never. And not every silence is a stop sign. Sometimes it's just a pause for your protection. So breathe, pull back from the timeline you forced on yourself, and understand this. The longer it takes, the stronger it becomes. The person who's building slowly, deeply, intentionally, they will outlast every fast success story that came before them. This is not a race, it's a rhythm. Your only job is to stay in harmony with it. Because when the time is right, everything will fall into place. Not because you pushed, but because you prepared. But what if, in all that waiting, the world tries to tempt you again? What if people return not with love, but with guilt? What if silence becomes uncomfortable? Again, the next truth we'll uncover is this. Not everyone deserves access to your vision. Not everyone should hear your dreams before they're ready. Let's move forward. We just explored the power of patience, how trusting the timing of your life transforms pressure into peace. But even as you grow quietly, not everyone will celebrate that growth. In fact, your silence may disturb those who once controlled your voice. Let's continue, because now we uncover the deeper protection found in discretion. Not everyone deserves access to your vision. That's a hard truth, but a necessary one. The more you share, the more you expose. And when you expose too soon, You invite energy that isn't there to support, but to sabotage. Some people only want to hear your plans so they can plant doubt in your mind. Others listen not to encourage, but to compete. And many don't want clarity from you. They want control over you. When you overshare, you give people ammunition. They don't need to attack you openly. They simply speak doubt into your dream in subtle, poisonous ways. They raise their eyebrows. They question your ability. They pretend to misunderstand, not because they can't comprehend, but because they hope you'll second-guess yourself. This is why silence becomes a shield. Not everything you're working on should be visible while it's growing. Not every move you're making should be explained before it's executed. Think about it. How many dreams have died at the hands of early opinions? How many people were passionate about something until they shared it with the wrong person? And suddenly that fire dimmed. Suddenly what felt possible felt small again. It wasn't because they weren't capable. It was because they handed their idea to someone who couldn't see beyond their own limitations. You have to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Your growth doesn't need to be validated. It needs to be guarded. Work in silence. Build behind the scenes. Let the results speak, not your posts, not your explanations, not your predictions. Because the truth is, some people will only believe in you after it works, and that's okay. You don't owe them a front row seat to your process. They can see the final show. If they're still around, when you keep your plans quiet, you conserve your energy. You don't waste time defending something that hasn't even bloomed yet. You keep your momentum strong, your vision clear, your focus unshaken. And when the time comes, when the vision becomes reality, there will be no room for doubt, no need for validation, no defense necessary, because the work will have already answered the question. The silence will have already spoken louder than words ever could. Remember, a lion doesn't warn before it strikes. The sun doesn't explain why it rises. The ocean doesn't need to convince you of its depth. They just are, and their presence alone is undeniable. You are under no obligation to update people on your journey. You don't owe constant status reports on your growth. You don't need to prove to anyone that you're becoming something greater. You just need to become it, and when you do, the ones who doubted you will watch in silence. The ones who dismissed you will wish they hadn't. And the ones who believed in you all along, they'll know, not because you said it, but because they can feel it in who you've become. Your evolution isn't something that needs to be narrated in real time. It's something that unfolds quietly until one day it's undeniable. So stop rushing to announce what you're working on. Stop trying to prove you're growing. You are not here to be impressive. You're here to be authentic. And authenticity doesn't require applause to be real. Now that you've protected your growth and withdrawn from noise, what happens when those same people who once overlooked you begin to return? Not to support you, but to reclaim control. That's where the final silence must begin. The silence that speaks not just to others, but for you. Let's keep going. We've seen how silence shields your vision, how it keeps your growth safe from doubt and interference. But what happens when the same people who once overlooked you return, not with encouragement, but with control? That's where your silence takes on its sharpest edge. Some people only respect you when they feel they have the upper hand. When you're explaining yourself, they feel powerful. When you're defending your choices, they feel justified. When you're proving your worth, they feel secure. But the moment you stop, the moment you fall silent, they panic. They accuse you of being distant. They call you cold, ungrateful, or changed. But the truth is, you haven't changed. You've simply stopped playing their game. They thrived on your explanations because explanations gave them leverage. They thrived on your defenses because defenses gave them entry points. They thrived on your constant communication because communication gave them control. But silence takes that away. It disarms manipulation. It removes the hooks they once used to pull you, and suddenly they're left facing themselves. That's why silence makes people so uncomfortable. It's a mirror. It forces them to sit with their own intentions without your words to cover them up. When you no longer react, they must reveal who they really are. Do they respect you without control? Do they honor you without access? Do they stay when there's nothing to manipulate? Because here's the truth. Someone who only respects you when they can control you never respected you at all. Your silence teaches this better than any speech could. You don't need to argue. You don't need to debate. You don't need to justify. Just stay quiet and watch. If they retreat, then let them go. If they lash out, then let them reveal themselves. If they stay, even without your explanations, then maybe they were genuine all along. Silence is the test, the filter, the proof. It's also your greatest protection, because when you stop speaking, you stop handing over your thoughts like open books. You stop giving manipulators the material they need to twist your words. Instead, they're forced to show you their true face. And yes, the truth might hurt. It may strip away illusions you held onto. It may end relationships you thought would last forever. But in the end, it frees you, because nothing is heavier than pretending you're respected, when in reality, you're only being managed. Think of silence as your boundary, a wall not made of anger, but of clarity. When you stop explaining, you stop negotiating your worth. When you stop defending, you stop making excuses for growth. When you stop reacting, you stop letting others dictate your energy, and that's when you regain control. People can only manipulate you with the tools you hand them. Take back those tools, and suddenly their grip slips away. It may shock them, it may anger them, it may confuse them, but it will protect you. And that's the ultimate purpose of silence, not to punish, but to preserve. So let your stillness be the answer, let your silence be the teacher, and let your absence of reaction speak louder than their noise, because at the end of the day, those who are truly for you will remain, even when your mouth is closed, and those who aren't will vanish when your silence exposes the truth. But silence doesn't just reveal others, it reveals you. It shows you who respects your boundaries, and who never did. It teaches you to listen not only to others, but to yourself. And that's the next lesson. The inner mirror of silence, the one that forces you to face your own truth. Let's continue. We've seen how silence disarms manipulation, exposing the truth of others. But silence doesn't only reveal people around you, it also reveals you. It's the mirror that reflects your own patterns, your own habits, your own hidden truth. When you step back from the noise, something powerful happens. You begin to hear not just the voices of others, but the voice within, and often that voice is the hardest one to face, because in silence, there are no distractions. There's no performance to hide behind, no applause to numb the doubt, no conversations to cover the unease. It's just you. Raw, unfiltered, unescapable. That's why so many people fear silence. It doesn't just reveal the world, it reveals themselves. You start noticing patterns you ignored. The way you over-explain, the way you shrink for validation, the way you trade peace for approval. You see clearly how much energy you've wasted chasing what never deserved you. You realize how many times you've betrayed yourself to keep others comfortable. And it stings, because truth always does, but the sting is healing. It's the wound that leads to wisdom. It's the pain that pushes you into presence. Silence teaches you discipline. It keeps you from reacting impulsively. It protects you from saying things you'll regret. It helps you hold your emotions steady when the world tries to provoke you. Because here's the reality. The moment someone learns how to provoke you, they gain power over you. But when you remain silent, unshaken, unbothered, they lose that control. Your stillness becomes your shield. Some of the greatest victories in life don't come from what you say, but from what you refuse to say. Not every insult deserves a reply. Not every doubt deserves a defense. Not every challenge deserves your energy. Your silence saves your strength. It keeps your fire for battles that matter. It allows your actions, not your arguments, to be your proof. Think about it. The most powerful people you admire, the leaders, the visionaries, the icons, they don't waste words. When they speak, the world listens, because silence gave their words weight. That's the difference. Most people speak to be heard. The wise speak only when silence can't carry the message alone. And in that discipline, you learn the deepest form of control. Control not over others, but over yourself, because the hardest person to master is always the one in the mirror. Silence gives you that mastery. It forces you to sit with your thoughts long, enough to separate the lies from the truth. It slows you down so you can see the warning signs you once ignored. It gives you clarity in a world designed to confuse you. And clarity, that's the real currency of strength. Noise is everywhere. Opinions are endless. Distractions are constant. But clarity, that is rare, and it only lives in the quiet. So ask yourself, when was the last time you truly listened to your own voice? When was the last time you made space for silence, not as an escape, but as a teacher? Because the answers you're chasing, the peace you crave, the direction you need, they won't come from more noise. They'll come from less. So embrace the quiet, not just as a pause from the world, but as a mirror for your soul. Because the truth always rises when the noise falls away. And once you master the inner silence, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see not just yourself clearly, but others as well. You'll notice who values you without performance, who respects you without explanation, and who only stayed as long as you entertained their expectations. That's the next lesson. The silence that separates the genuine from the false. Let's move forward. Silence revealed the self. It forced us to face our inner truth, to separate lies from clarity, and to gain mastery over our own emotions. Now, with that clarity within, silence begins to work outward again. It shows us who around us is real, and who was only playing a role. When you go quiet, people reveal themselves, not with words, but with actions. Stop explaining and watch who still understands you. Stop chasing and see who comes closer on their own. Stop performing and notice who respects you when there's no show. Because silence is a filter. It removes the noise so you can hear the truth that was always there. Some people will stay steady, supportive, genuine. Others will vanish, irritated, offended, or simply uninterested when you're no longer entertaining them. And as painful as that sounds, it's a gift, because silence saves you from wasting your life on illusions. When you stop calling, who calls you? When you stop making plans, who makes them for you? When you stop reaching out, who notices the distance? The answers don't come in speeches, they come in silence. And the truth is this: real loyalty doesn't need constant reminders. Real love doesn't demand endless explanations. Real respect doesn't vanish when you set boundaries. But silence will show you who only stayed for the benefits of your presence. The ones who wanted your attention, but not your growth. The ones who valued your availability, but not your value. And when that truth arrives, it can feel heavy, it can feel lonely. But it is also liberating, because you no longer have to wonder. You no longer have to ask. You no longer have to beg. Silence already gave you the answer. It's not your job to convince anyone of your worth. It's not your duty to prove that you matter. The people who can't see your value without you shouting it were never truly meant to walk with you. And here's the beauty, the ones who remain. They remain stronger, clearer, truer. They don't need explanations. They don't need performances. They don't need the noise. They see you even in silence. They respect you even in stillness. They stay even without the show. That's how you separate the real from the false. Not by demanding truth, but by letting silence uncover it. It's like watching fog lift from a landscape. At first, everything seems full. The shapes, the figures, the outlines. But when the mist clears, you see what's solid and what was only shadow. Silence is that clearing. It shows you which connections were built on stone and which were written in smoke. And as the truth emerges, you realize something powerful. You didn't lose people, you lost illusions. And what you gained instead was clarity, the most valuable gift silence can ever give. So let the silence speak. Let it clean the room of noise. Let it carry away those who never truly belonged, because in the end, those who can sit with you in the quiet are the ones who will stand with you in the storm. But silence doesn't just filter people, it also protects your future. Because when you overshare, you risk interference, and when you guard your dreams in silence, you give them the space to grow strong. That's the next lesson, the discipline of keeping your vision private until it's ready to shine. Let's continue. We've seen how silence separates the genuine from the false. It filters illusions from truth, leaving only what's real. But silence isn't just about people, it's also about protecting the future you're building, because what you reveal too soon, others may try to ruin. Not every dream is meant to be announced. Not every plan is meant to be shared. Some visions must be protected in silence, like a flame sheltered from the wind. Because when you reveal too much, too early, you invite not only attention, but interference. And interference comes in many forms. Doubt disguised as advice, jealousy dressed as concern, or distraction posing as opportunity. Have you ever noticed that when you share your plans too soon, suddenly everyone has an opinion? They tell you it's impossible. They remind you of your past failures. They laugh, they question, they poke holes. Not because it can't be done, but because they can't see it being done. And if you're not careful, their disbelief becomes your doubt. Their fear becomes your hesitation. Their limits become your cage. That's why silence is essential. It's not secrecy out of fear. It's protection out of wisdom. The strongest seeds grow underground, hidden, unseen, quietly taking root. Only when they are strong enough do they break the surface and rise. Your dreams are the same. They need privacy to grow roots. They need silence to gain strength. They need protection before they are ready to be tested, because once something is visible, it is vulnerable, and the world is full of voices ready to tear down what they don't understand. So build quietly, work in the shadows, prepare when no one is watching, and when your vision finally emerges, it won't need defense. It will stand undeniable, proof of the silence that protected it. Think of history's greatest innovators, leaders and creators. They didn't announce every step. They didn't broadcast every plan. They worked quietly, often in obscurity. until their work was ready to speak for itself. And when it did, the world had no choice but to listen. Your silence isn't hiding. Your silence is strategy. It is the wisdom of knowing that not everyone deserves access to your vision. Because the truth is this: the wrong energy at the wrong time can derail even the strongest destiny. But guarded in silence, your future is untouchable, and when it's time to show the world what you've built, you won't have to convince anyone. The results will speak. The success will echo. The silence will have prepared the stage. So protect your vision. Keep your plans close. Let your silence be the soil that nourishes your dreams until they are unshakable. Because when it's time, no one will be able to deny what you've become. But there's one final layer of silence even deeper than guarding your vision. It's the silence that comes when you face failure, setbacks, and storms. The question is, will you complain and crumble, or will you endure in stillness until the storm passes? Let's keep going. We've seen how silence guards your vision, how it protects your future by keeping your plans safe from interference. But silence is not only for preparation, it's also for survival. Because when storms hit, when life feels heavy, when failure strikes, silence becomes your anchor. Storms come for everyone. No one escapes them. Moments where the plan collapses, where the door slams shut, where everything you built seems to crumble, the natural reaction? Panic. We complain, we cry out, we beg for answers, we search for someone to blame. But in doing so, we waste energy that could have been used to endure. Silence in the storm is not about ignoring the pain. It's about refusing to be consumed by it. It's about sitting in the chaos without letting it dictate your spirit. Think of a tree in the wind. The branches sway, the leaves tremble, but the roots remain unshaken. That's what silence makes you: rooted, grounded, unbroken. Because when you are silent in struggle, you hear lessons that noise would drown. You hear resilience whispering that you are stronger than you think. You hear patience reminding you that seasons change. You hear wisdom telling you this storm, too, shall pass. Most people collapse in difficulty because they never learn to be still. They try to fight every wave, and in fighting they drown. But the ones who endure, they don't waste energy thrashing. They float, they trust, they let the storm spend itself out, and when the clouds clear, they are still standing. That is the discipline of silence. It's not denial, it's direction. It's the choice to conserve strength for what matters, rather than wasting it on noise that solves nothing. Ask yourself, have you ever looked back on a hardship and realized the answers came later, long after the shouting stopped? That clarity never arrived in the middle of panic. It arrived in the quiet afterward. That's the power of silence. It doesn't erase the storm, but it carries you through it. And when you emerge, you're not only stronger, you're wiser, because silence in suffering refines you. It strips away illusions. It reveals what you truly need and what you never did. In hardship, people often reveal themselves. Some disappear when the noise dies down. Others stand firm even when the ground shakes. Silence helps you see the difference. And most importantly, silence shows you yourself, your resilience, your patience, your ability to endure without collapsing. Because strength isn't proven in calm waters, it's proven in storms. And when you learn to be silent in the storm, you learn that no storm can truly break you. So when the winds rise and the skies darken, do not shout into the void. Do not waste your breath cursing the rain. Be still. Be silent, be strong, because storms always end. And those who endure in silence rise with a power unshaken by noise. But endurance is only one part of the lesson. Silence doesn't just carry you through storms. It also teaches you how to rise afterward, how to rebuild, how to step forward, how to let your actions, not your words, become your legacy. Let's continue. Silence carried us through the storm. It anchored us when the winds rose and the chaos screamed for our attention. But silence is not only about survival, it's about the rise that comes after. Because storms don't just break, they also build. When the storm ends, the world is never the same. Trees are stripped, roads are washed, foundations are tested, and yet what remains, what endures, is stronger. Purified by struggle, so too is your life. Silence after hardship is not emptiness. It is rebirth. It is the quiet moment when you take stock of what's left, what was real enough to last, and what the storm washed away. And here is the beauty. Storms don't just destroy. They reveal, they show you the cracks you ignored. They clear away what was weak. They leave behind only what was built to last. When the noise settles, silence gives you clarity. It whispers, now you see who stood with you. Now you see what mattered. Now you see what must be rebuilt and what must be released. In this silence, you are offered two choices: complain about what was lost, or create something stronger from what remains. And the powerful always choose creation. They don't waste energy arguing with the past. They don't beg for what left. They don't explain to those who doubted. They simply build. Quietly, steadily, faithfully. Because real legacies are not born in noise. They are born in silence, not in constant announcements, but in consistent action, not in empty speeches, but in undeniable results. Look back at the greatest stories of resilience. They all share one pattern: silence in the building, noise in the results. The victory always echoed louder, because the preparation was hidden, and so it must be with you. Let your comeback be crafted in silence. Let your resilience be your reply. Let your success be your speech, because when you rise after the storm, you don't need to tell anyone you've changed. They'll see it in your discipline. They'll feel it in your presence. They'll know it when the results stand before them. Undeniable, unshakable, unarguable. Silence after the storm is where transformation becomes visible. Not because you spoke about it, but because you lived it. So don't waste energy trying to convince the world you've survived. Show them by thriving. Don't explain your scars. Let them shine as proof. Don't narrate your rebuilding. Let the strength of your new foundation speak louder than any words could. Because silence has already told the story. Now your actions will complete it. And yet, even in rebuilding, silence still has one final role. Not everything you've endured deserves to be spoken. Not every pain, not every victory, not every lesson. The wisest know when to speak. But more importantly, when not to. That is the art of selective silence. Let's continue. We saw how silence after the storm becomes the foundation for rebuilding, how it shifts your scars into symbols of resilience. But not every story needs to be told. Not every struggle needs to be shared. Not every lesson needs to be spoken aloud. This is where the wisdom of selective silence begins. Silence is not only survival, not only endurance, not only clarity, it is also discretion, knowing what to share and what to protect. Because not everything you experience deserves an audience. Some victories are sacred. Some struggles are too profound to be tossed into casual conversation. Have you ever noticed how the strongest people rarely tell their whole story? They give glimpses, enough to inspire, but never the full depth because they understand something powerful. The deepest transformations can only be understood by living them, not by explaining them. Selective silence is a sign of mastery. It is the ability to say, "This moment is mine," not for validation, not for applause, not for attention, but for me. You don't have to share every detail of your healing. You don't have to explain every step of your growth. You don't have to prove how far you've come. The right people will see it in your presence. They'll feel it in your energy. They'll notice it without you needing to spell it out, and the wrong people, even if you explained every word, they still wouldn't understand. So why waste sacred truths on ears that cannot hear? Why waste wisdom on those who only listen to respond? Selective silence is not secrecy. It is strategy. It is the awareness that some things grow stronger when kept close to the heart. Think of a candle in the wind. If you expose it carelessly, it flickers and dies, but shielded, protected, it burns steady. Your growth is the same. Some lessons are not ready to be spoken. They're still burning within you, still shaping you. To expose them too soon would risk their flame. So hold them, nurture them, let them become part of you before you share them. And when you do speak, your words will carry weight, because they come not from reaction, but from reflection. This is the difference between noise and wisdom. Noise is constant. Wisdom is selective. And the more you practice selective silence, the more powerful your voice becomes. Because when you do speak, people know it matters. So let your silence protect your sacred lessons. Let it hold your victories until they are undeniable. Let it guard your struggles until they have transformed into strength. Because in the end, silence is not the absence of communication. It is the elevation of it. And now, having walked through storms, growth, and the wisdom of restraint, silence teaches its final lesson, that the greatest power is not in proving, but in becoming. Not in demanding, but in embodying. That's where this journey leads next. The silence that turns into presence. Let's move forward. From the very first page, we began with a question. What if silence is not weakness, but power? And step by step, through storm and stillness, through patience and presence, through absence and discretion, we discovered the answer. Silence is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is not retreat. It is preparation. It is not weakness. It is resilience. To be silent is not to vanish, but to endure. To be silent is not to surrender, but to observe. To be silent is not to bow down, but to rise in unseen ways until your strength is undeniable. This entire journey has been one truth spoken in 1,000 echoes. Stay silent, and everything will come naturally. We saw in the beginning how silence separates the strong from the loud. The ones who shout are not always the ones who lead. The ones who perform are not always the ones who last. True strength is quiet, measured, deliberate. We saw how silence commands respect, because when you do not beg to be heard, people lean in closer. When you do not overspeak, your words gain weight. When you act without noise, your results become your testimony. We saw how silence filters people. When you stop explaining, those who are real remain. When you stop chasing, those who value you draw nearer. When you stop performing, those who never cared fade away. In stillness you lose illusions, and in their place you gain truth. We saw how silence protects your vision. Dreams too fragile to endure public doubt must be guarded in private soil. Plans too sacred to be ridiculed must be nourished in secrecy. Because what grows in silence grows stronger, and when it emerges, It cannot be denied. We saw how silence steadies you in storms when the world crashes around you. Noise solves nothing, but stillness conserves strength. Stillness endures. Stillness trusts the storm to pass. And in that patience, you rise unbroken. We saw how silence after the storm becomes rebirth. The noise clears, the fog lifts, and you see what remained. Not what was lost, but what was real enough to survive. And in that clarity, you choose not to complain, but to create. We saw how silence in healing becomes discretion. Not every scar needs to be displayed. Not every battle needs to be announced. The wisest know that selective silence preserves sacred lessons until they are ready to shine. And finally, we saw how silence transforms into presence. How by not proving, you begin embodying. How by not demanding, you begin radiating. How by not chasing, you begin attracting. This is the Stoic way, to control not the world, but the self. To seek not applause, but alignment. To demand not recognition, but mastery. The philosophy of silence is not about shutting the mouth, but it is about opening the mind. It is about choosing restraint when anger tempts you, choosing patience when fear provokes you, choosing stillness when noise surrounds you, because silence is more than soundlessness. Is strategy, it is discipline, it is strength refined into presence. So let us weave together every thread of this journey into one reflection. Stay silent in the face of provocation, because the one who controls their tongue controls their destiny. Stay silent in the presence of doubt, because your results will silence critics more than any argument. Stay silent in the growth of your vision, because sacred work needs sacred protection. Stay silent in the storm, because survival requires focus, not panic. Stay silent in the aftermath, because rebuilding is louder than complaining. Stay silent in wisdom, because not all truths deserve to be spoken to unready ears. Stay silent in mastery, because real strength doesn't announce itself. It simply is, and so the journey returns to its beginning. Stay silent and everything will come naturally, because life itself follows this rhythm. The sun doesn't announce its rising. It simply rises. The ocean doesn't shout its depth. It simply is deep. The mountain doesn't apologize for its height. It simply stands. You, too, were made to stand without apology. You, too, were made to rise without noise. You, too, were made to embody power without performance. So let your silence speak. Let your stillness shine. Let your presence carry the weight of all the noise you left behind. And when the world wonders how you built, how you endured, how you became, smile gently, because you will know the secret. It wasn't in the shouting, it wasn't in the chasing, it wasn't in the proving, it was in the silence, the discipline, the patience, the clarity. Stay silent and everything will come naturally. The right people will find you. The right opportunities will align with you. The right timing will unfold for you. Because silence is not the absence of power, it is the origin of it. And once you learn to master silence, you no longer need to master the world, because the world in time will bend to meet your stillness. Final reflection. Be the mountain. Unshaken. Be the river. Steady. Be the flame. Shielded. Be the silence. Powerful. Because the greatest strength you will ever carry is the one that never has to raise its voice. Thank you for walking this path of stillness and strength with us. If this message offered even a moment of clarity, even a breath of peace, then you already carry the seed of change within you. Welcome to this channel, a place where wisdom whispers louder than noise, and where growth is built in silence. And remember, this is only the beginning. We are just getting started. The next chapter awaits, and I'll see you there.